Good evening. Well, I'd like to get started. Welcome to the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting, February 24th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Before we get started, Josh, could you read the quote?
Sure. Perfection is a road, not a destination. Every time I live, I get an education. Burke Hudson.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
First item on the agenda, the Citizens Forum. I'd like to invite anyone to the podium to discuss and or present anything that might not be on the agenda. We have quite an audience here tonight. Yes. When you come to the podium, please state your name and tell us what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. My name is Harrison Levitan. I'm here tonight on behalf of Senator Amy Klobuchar. 4 states will get a say before the great state of Maine in who our next Democratic nominee for president is. It's a lot of expectation. I think that we all know that this election feels different, feels special, and I think it calls for a special diligence. I'm here to ask a small favor of you all. Try to tune it out. It's a lot of noise, and I think that the voice of Maine should be heard. Personally, I'd like you to consider Senator Amy Klobuchar. I think that she has a very strong record of steadfast experience in bridging a divisiveness that we're seeing in small communities and big communities alike. I think that she's somebody who can bring us back together, more importantly, get things done. I just want to thank you all for your time and allow me to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for a non-agenda item? Not seeing a rush to the podium, we'll move on. The next item on the agenda, the administrator's report.
Beyond the agenda, we've been working diligently behind the scenes in preparation for next Tuesday's presidential primary election, as well as a state referendum ballot question. Just like to remind anyone that's a Harbor user that your fee deadline is coming up rapidly. Please get your Harbor fee renewals in so that you don't have to pay a late fee or lose your privileges. Outside of that, I don't have much to pass on tonight.
Thank you, David. Next item on the agenda, meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here at the Lincolnville Town Office unless announced otherwise. Lakes and Ponds Committee, is that right, Gary? Yes. Scheduled to meet Tuesday, February 25th, 7 p.m. Midcoast Solid Waste Corporation Board of Directors meets Wednesday, February 26th, 6:30 p.m. at the Camden Town Office. Planning Board is scheduled to meet Wednesday, February 26th, 7 p.m. Broadband Committee meets on Thursday, February 27th at 7 p.m. Recreation Commission is scheduled to meet Monday, March 2nd, 5:30. The presidential primary and special state referendum election will be held on Tuesday, March 3rd from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the gymnasium of the Lincolnville Central School. And the Board of Selectmen meet next in regular session on Monday, March 9th, 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. Are there any upcoming community events? Is there anybody in the audience that has any upcoming community events that they would like to announce? Okay, not seeing a rush to the podium. We'll move on to the meeting minutes. First, February 10th.
I move that the board approve the February 10th, 2020 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passed. Meeting minutes for February 11th, 13th, 2020.
I move that the board approve the February 11th and 13th, 2020 meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? Motion passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, committee chair and department head updates. Conservation Commission. Hey, Will.
Hello, hello. Will Brown from Conservation Commission. Got a laptop up here. So, brown-tailed moth. The Conservation Commission has turned in a survey to you. After we did our survey, broken up among a number of people in town that were out scouring the roads and counting nests and cocoons up in the trees, the winter webs, which are going to be opening up come springtime and giving us the pleasure of another season. Rich is going to come up and do some explaining about the statistical part of the whole thing. Back in July, we were given the charge to work on the brown-tailed moth situation, to try to get an assessment of it, and an estimate of what the future might hold in store for us. And we planned according to that, and we did a winter web survey around town, which basically covered about 43 miles of the roadside in town, and probably about 140 or 150 different GPS points, survey points around the town, counting as best we could, giving estimated counts of nests in trees, which are predominantly oak trees, of which there are a lot of mature, tall oaks in town, along the roadside this is. But also finding that birch trees and some fruit trees, apple trees and such, were also becoming favored places for the moths to eat and leave their nests for next year. A couple of people to mention that have been really, really helpful. They initiated a lot of the impetus for this whole thing, which is Arlene and Liz Laylock over there, Arlene Shurwitz and Leighton Shurwitz and Liz Laylock. And they've been working with us through the whole thing, and I should say in a lot of ways we've been working with them, because they have been really upfront through this whole project. There are some methods of dealing with brown-tailed moth, but they all seem to be very expensive, number one, or it's not really known how effective they're going to be. The one thing that I brought along, which is not a calibrated weapon in any case, is a pole saw with clippers on it. And I mean, using a pole saw generally, I've found the ones that you would get, say, at Home Depot that give you an extension range of about 12 or 13 feet into a tree are great. They're cheap, and they work, but only for 12 or 13 feet. There are some online. You can spend a few $100 real easily, but this one is good for 26 feet. It's got 5 fiberglass extensions in it, and a clipper on the top piece and a rope. I haven't used it yet, as you can see, but it was about $80, $85, and it seems pretty sturdy, and the comments from other people that have bought the one are very positive about it. Now, this is not going to help out anybody with a tall oak tree, but for fruit trees and such, for yard trees where you might be able to get on a ladder and have some maneuverability between branches to snip off the tips of the branches where the nests are, it might prove to be helpful for you, just to keep them down a little bit more in your dooryard, because as probably Arlene or Liz could more aptly say, there are several of those little critters in each one of those little white canopies, silk canopies up there that you can see in the trees. And if you look at the oak trees, a lot of them, you'll see there's several of those little nests up there in the trees. And so the math gets large very fast in terms of how many critters we're going to have coming out next spring. But these, I think, may be handy and accessible to some degree to most people to use if you've got smaller trees in your in your dooryard around the house. And you might be able to have some effect in that way. So, not sure what else to say before getting down to Rich's part of it. Other than this survey, now that we have done it, puts us in a position to submit it to the state, so that if there is any kind of remediation program in the future that comes up, where we might be able to get some finances from the state to help with the problem, we will be at least in line towards that. So one of the things that we're asking for tonight is for your approval to have David submit this to the state, this report to the state, so that we can get on the line for that funding in the future if the funding arises. Okay? Questions or anything?
Any questions from the board?
I know you didn't do a survey last year, but can you tell if there are more or less nests than the year before?
I can't, because I really wasn't aware of it until I started to notice the defoliation. And the next time we'll see the defoliation will be this year, when these canopies come too. So, I can't really say. I just know that there's a lot of them out there.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think other people can address things. Yeah. Please.
If you look at the 2019 survey map, we were in the moderate range. When the state entomologists started to look at some of the data from our, just a cursory view of it, and also from the fall flyover that they did to see the defoliation from the newly hatched wet caterpillars that we had from the summer he projected that we're going to go into a moderate to a major infestation this year. And I think if you look at what we have in the 44 roads, that bears it out.
Okay.
So I have a question as well. So what's the longevity of this? I mean, it started, obviously, I'm not so sure that, would it be safe to say it started year before last, or we just didn't notice it?
The state entomologist, and that's Ellie Groden,
Yep.
began looking at this in 2015, when we started to notice that it was starting to progress. I believe that some people in Lincolnville, we're going into our third year of infestation. What is happening is the prior infestation is patchy and scattered, not quite as heavy, but it looks like they kind of moved inland and down the road.
Okay, so we're about 3 to 4 years in. What's the longevity of this before it just, and then it goes through, it completes its cycle, and then?
If I had the answer to that,
Yeah.
I think in one of our meetings I said I had 3 words. It all depends.
Yeah.
If there is a positive correlation with a wet spring, and what happens in a wet spring is that there is a fungus, a yellow fungus that attacks them. Well, the interesting point is that we did have some of the fungus around here, but it seemed that they were able to construct their cocoons. The fungus didn't enter the cocoons, and we have what we have now. There is another correlation is if we have a warm, dry summer, that there is an increase of them. So it'll go down if there is a wet spring. It'll go up if we have a dry summer. And there also are some predators that are starting to come. The university is also working with the predators that were actually imported from Europe. Those are mostly moths, not wasps and flies. I think we don't know. We don't know, and that's one of the problems, is that we don't know. I know in the report that the commission gave in to you regarding Yarmouth, they've had several years of an infestation, and then the fungus finally did that, had a big deterrent in them. So I've heard 3-year cycles, I've heard 7-year cycles, but at this point, it really depends on if the fungus can get them, if they run out of their food source, and what the summers are like. The winter weather does not deter them. Someone asked me about the ice storm we have. I wrote to 3 people, the entomologist in University of Maine, the entomologist in Augusta for the Forest Service, and also the person who is now working on winter webs and the chemistry of them, and she's getting a PhD, and I asked them about the ice, and did that help, or did that do anything to them, and they said no, because their winter webs are like, think of a high-tech sleeping bag, and think of the fact that they also have an internal system like an antifreeze. So they're quite ingenious.
One more question. So the survey, the Winter Web Survey 2019, paints a picture of where the concentrated areas are, from Northport to Camden. It goes out into Hope a little bit. Is the data that was collected by you people, is that integrated in this? And is this comprehensive? Meaning, is this worst case scenario right now? Or is it, or could it be worse than this? Is that,
May I
do you
defer?
understand what I'm trying to?
Would you like to answer his questions? Because I think he's the person who can answer those questions.
Harley, thank you.
Rich Smith, Conservation Commission. What we want to do, that's the 2019 survey.
Yeah,
So what we're doing right now is 2020. We
okay.
want to send
So
this
that's
new
what our
information
data would,
we would go into for the 2020 survey.
okay.
So it would supplement that. Does that sort of address your question?
So when our people did the survey.
Yeah.
Is that just what they can see from the road,
It
or
was
is
just a
it,
roadside survey, nothing more.
will there be an aerial survey as well to add to and or
My
support that?
understanding is that they will do an aerial, and
Okay.
they basically judge that from what they see as for defoliation.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it'll be later in the year, and I think that's what that's based on.
After we've all been itching for
Yeah,
about 6
exactly,
months.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate
Right.
that. Okay, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
So,
Appreciate it.
no. So anyhow, maybe we should just quickly, don't want to take up too much of your time, but just look at what our results were from this survey. I tried to do some mapping with this. Not that, So each one of these little dots here represents a GPS data point. You have a list of all the GPS data points in your handout. And I tried to put the colors so that they were sort of relating to what we were finding as far as numbers of webs. The lighter colors, the yellows, were sort of 10 to 99 webs at a spot. And as you progress up, you get to the oranges. You might have, the orange was 100 to 499. We have some purples here, which indicate that they're 5,000 plus. So as you can see, we're pretty much, we've got webs pretty much scattered throughout the town. We didn't find too many areas that were completely void of webs, but the difference here is just that the intensity of the webs that we have right now at this point in time, which was the last week in January, first week in February, is basically what this portrays right now. So that's what we had just a couple weeks ago. What we're going to do about it is going to be some deliberations continuing, but we wanted to get an idea of where we stand right now, what's it look like, what can we maybe expect this coming year. So this is a quick snapshot of what we've got and the snapshot of all the work that all the volunteers did. 8 sets of 2 teams, 2-person teams went out and scoured as Will mentioned, scoured the roadsides and came up with these data points here. The data set will then be, as I said, hopefully, with your permission, be sent off to the state. There is a possibility of a declaration of a public health nuisance. That's something that we're sort of looking at as a possibility down the line. If we want to do that, and which opens up a funding pocketbook for us, potentially, that would require close communication with Frank here as our public health officer, as well as sign off by the State Forest Service.
Who declares that a public?
One of the states.
And what's the criteria for that?
Well, it's basically a 1-page application form. As I said, it has to be signed off by the public health officer here in the town, plus the Forest Service. And then it goes into a black box, I think. So I'm not really sure how they really
I'm
decide.
familiar with the black box.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Yeah. Anyhow, so this is basically what the commission's been up to, and now that we have an idea of what we might expect, we'll continue on from here.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Great. Arlene, you had mentioned something, and I don't know if anyone on the commission has information. Is the state releasing European wasps across Maine to deal with the brown-tailed moths, or?
I believe they are in selected areas. There was a presentation in Belfast, and Ellie Groden, who is now a retired entomologist from the University of Maine, and they're in certain areas they are doing that. I did ask, there is a new entomologist there who actually has experience with drones, and they are beginning to do, or she's written a grant to do research on tall oaks. I asked her on behalf of the Conservation Commission if we could be considered, and I said, how about this year? To which she said would probably be for next year. But she will keep us in mind. So that's, I don't think it's a statewide releasing of these insects, but it is something that, I know that somebody on Facebook found a strange looking fly last year and was going to kill it. And then I wrote to her, don't do that. It's actually one of the flies that goes after brown-tailed moths. So I think that they did notice in some of their research that there seems to be, the predators seem to follow them. But I don't know, I don't think they're releasing them en masse. I think they're being more selective than that. And they're also doing lab field work as well as lab work with them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything?
Thank you. We have any more? Yeah?
Rosie Gary. So, just for your information, I don't know if it's in your packet or not.
We got
about-
nothing here.
We got nothing on what they gave.
Yes, we do.
So I don't know if it's in there or not, but just for the information out there. Yesterday, I was called over to look at some oak trees on the beach road, and the people have several grandchildren, and they have people in and out of their property, and they have multiple oak trees ranging from anywhere from 60 to 100 years old on the property. And so they had a specialist come in, a tree specialist, and looked at the trees, and to cut the moss out and to inoculate the trees was $8,000 per tree. No guarantee that it was going to work. So the guarantee that they came up with, they're gonna whack them because they don't wanna do it, so they're gonna cut the trees. So just to give you an idea of what, this was just what was given to me yesterday.
Thank you, Rosa. Anyone else? Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Layton from Lincolnville. I don't mean to be a downer here, but I do want to say that map didn't show anything other than what was on the roads. And for anybody who's been off the roads, either down driveways or back or up on the hills or something, there's a lot of oak trees and they're all over the place.
That's why
So
I asked about
this-
the aerial.
Yeah, you can assume that if the whole map can be the red or the yellow and red dots rather than just the roads. I'd like to suggest that nobody has a good idea of how to get rid of these things. They're either very expensive or ideas that are still 2 or 3 years away. Towns south of here have had these go on for at least 3, 4, 5 years, or they're going into their 5th year. The towns to the south of us, it seems as though these bugs are going north at about 3 miles a year, but it is also weather dependent as well as other things. What I would suggest or would ask the board to at least consider is some way of alerting people, individuals in town, that when the time comes that these things are coming out, that they are anywhere from an inconvenience to a real health hazard, and it depends very much on the individual. Some people are quite allergic to them, and if they're not aware of what they're getting into, they end up going to the hospital with respiratory problems or other problems. Other people, it's a minor inconvenience. It itches a little bit for a day or two, and there's a rash, and they don't seem to bother them. But they're going to be around town, and to what extent the town, as an official body, would like to put out any kind of alarm or warning, or to say to people that now is the time to look out for that will be coming up when pretty much when the leaves begin to come out on the oak trees. The second thing that can be done is individuals can protect themselves in ways that they may not know of. I hate to say it, but it's a little bit like the fires in China. You have to you can wear masks so that you don't breathe any of the toxins. You can wear protective clothing if you're outside. There are various formulas to alleviate the itch. Some they were pretty much sold out of the various pharmacies last year. I don't know what it'll be like this year. And to what extent the town wants to put up any signs in public places such as Norton's Pond or other places where there are obviously oak trees and nests in those oak trees, just as warnings, is up to the town or up to the select board to decide how they want to handle this. But I don't mean to be alarmist, but it was very inconvenient for some people and a real medical problem for other people. So to the extent that the town can officially warn its citizens, and in particular people who may not be aware of this, tourists at Arts Cove, for example, or people hiking in the hills, that this is something that they can try to protect themselves with. There's also, the toxins on these are very small. You can put special screens on houses to try to keep the air, to filter the air that comes into your house and other things. And I'm not saying that the town should finance any of these, but they might ask for some of the communities to at least be aware of them, and there may be a way that people can come up with things that help. I don't know whether we could have a lending library that would lend out either masks or tree or cutters or other types of things. But I do feel like it's incumbent upon a town to say there's something that's poisonous here at a certain time, and people should be aware of it, because there's no other protection other than what the individuals themselves do for themselves. And it's nice if you have $8,000 and can cut down the trees right around your house, but that's not going to work for very many people in the town.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Is there any other discussion from Will?
Just the one final question we started with, which was, if the select board would give approval to send this information to the state so that we can, get on the list, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Is there anything else for Will before he sits down?
Nope.
You good? Okay. And no more deliberation from the board, or anything else on that matter?
No, I think we,
Do we wanna, entertain a motion?
I move that the Conservation Commission submit on behalf of the town of Lincolnville their brown-tail moth roadside winter web survey results to the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry.
So moved.
second.
Motion has been seconded. Is there any other discussion, something to add?
I just hope this helps and
Yeah.
they give us,
Yeah.
some tools to work with.
Okay, all those in favor? Motion passed. David, if we could just make a note to get back on a future agenda, about just having a conversation about some information sharing with the town, and we may have to involve the Conservation Committee, about, just education, much like we do about the floats and things of that nature. I think that would be well worth it. Next item on the agenda, renewable energy generated electricity for Lincolnville School.
Good evening. Thank you for the time on tonight's meeting agenda to discuss renewable generated electricity for LCS. I'm Greta Galusian, Suresmont Road, and tonight I am speaking for myself. As an aside, for the time being, some personal issues make it necessary for me to step away from work with the E-Team, but my commitment to moving our town forward toward transition to renewable energy at LCS continues. A short update on solar energy for LCS since I last spoke during the community forum at your January 27th select board meeting. About a week before the February 3rd school committee meeting, in a conversation with two E-Team members, one of the school committee members commented that it might be helpful if the school committee were presented with a petition showing town support for solar at LCS and/or support for a special town meeting on that issue. So taking that idea, a couple of E-Team members, myself included, began to circulate a petition. That petition was directed to the school committee to ask the select board to hold a town meeting so voters could consider and decide whether or not LCS would purchase electricity from the Livermore Falls Solar Farm. Over the weekend of February 1st and 2nd, as part of my just usual activities, I gathered about 24 signatures for that petition. All but one person I spoke with eagerly signed the petition, so there was a lot of interest in the town to have a special town meeting. There were many enthusiastic comments about solar energy were frequent, though more than one thought that Lincolnville Central School already had solar generated electricity from our municipal array. So it just speaks to the fact that there's a lot more information that needs to be widely distributed, but also a lot of interest and momentum about renewable energy at the school. The school is our largest user of energy in our town, and given all of the climate disruption that is happening worldwide, we all need to do our part to see how we can move toward cleaner energy. So the school committee chose not to include the solar PPA proposal on their February 3rd meeting agenda. Even so, more than 30 citizens attended that school committee meeting, expecting to speak during the public comment portion. After 10 or so citizens spoke, the school committee moved by a 3-2 vote to send a letter to Revision Energy stating that the school committee was not interested in that solar power purchase agreement proposal, and then the public comment period was ended shortly thereafter. That was Monday the 3rd. The following Sunday, on the 9th, the E-Team hosted a public information meeting at Lincolnville Central School. About 45 people attended, including 2 school committee members, the Union 69 school superintendent, and 1 select board member. John's not here. I was going to thank him for coming. The E-Team did about a 25-minute presentation, followed by a Q&A and community discussion. The meeting was scheduled to go between 4 and 5 p.m. However, it continued till about 6:30. And the reason I'm telling you this is that I really want to communicate to the select board the high level of interest that people in town have for getting renewable energy at the school. There were lots of questions regarding the solar PPA. Many expressed their desire for cleaner, cheaper, renewable energy, for protecting the environment, and for trying to do our part to address climate disruption. I see this as an issue that needs a lot more exposure and understanding. In reaching out in conversations with the budget committee members and others in our town, I have learned that there really is a need for wider awareness of options for renewable energy in our community, but specifically now at our school. So I'm here for really 2 reasons. One is to try to convey to you that there is a lot of talk in town about it. I have been unsolicited. People are sending me links to headlines in the news regarding solar energy. Portland City Council in the past week just voted unanimously 8-0 to increase their renewable energy for their municipality, including their schools. So it's a really huge amount of energy that they're choosing to go renewable, sustainable. So my 2 intents in coming here is to speak for the community to you as an elected body. In reaching out to budget committee members, since this affects finances, it was clear to me that a couple of members weren't even aware that there was this opportunity. So having sat through other select board meetings when the E-Team has come to give updates about our conversations with the school committee and the particular PPA proposal, I think I have a basic understanding and appreciation of our 3 elected, 2 committees and 1 board in town, and what their different jurisdictions are. It's a little obtuse in places, but I do have an appreciation for that. However, I also hear from people in town that people want to have a voice in this, and they want to have a vote in this. And I'm asking for your help to know how we can find a path forward to do that. So I've reached out to our town administrator, and David has been giving me some good civics lessons. So I think I'm getting a better understanding about how it operates to give citizens the opportunity to be a part of the process. So how we can help motivate action on town matters and do it through the proper channels. He's been giving me good guidance. In my own research, I discovered on the Maine Municipal Association website that since we have the select board / town administrator / town meeting form of government, that town meeting serves as the legislative body, passing the laws and approving the spending of money. So what I want you to hear is that people in town want to have a voice in this. And how can we get there? And that seems to be kind of our hurdle. David also pointed me to read the town municipal code. And if you go to section 2.02, which is warrants for town meetings, there are kind of 2 routes. So there are articles for the warrant. So the Board of Selectmen, on its own initiative, may by majority vote place on the warrant any article related to the welfare of the municipality. And then the second way is petitions for articles to be placed on the town warrant, town meeting warrant. and that is, any qualified voter may request the Board of Selectmen to place an article in the warrant, and that voter shall present in written form the substance of the article. So I'm wondering if there is a path that citizens can take to put some sort of article on our June town meeting warrant in regard to having renewable, sustainable energy be a goal that we want at the Lincolnville Central School. I'm not a lawyer. I know things have to have pass legal muster, as they say, but just as a starting point for discussion, would something like an article that would say that the town shall vote to mandate that the Lincolnville Central School Committee purchase LCS's electricity from a renewably generated source be something that could be placed on the June meeting? I think it's really important that if the town meeting is a legislative body and that we approve monies, that we have a time to be able to listen to our neighbors about this issue, to learn from each other, to consider the pros, the cons, the environmental benefits, the potential financial benefits and cost savings, and then to have a vote. So how do we work together so that the town can motivate on important town matters? It's a tough one, I know.
Well, I'm going to start by asking you a few questions, David.
Oh, good.
Not that you're a lawyer, but so what do you think would happen if we took Greta's recommendation and we had a majority vote on the select board that said, you know, Lincolnville, we mandate that the school committee, that the school, you know, run on solar energy within 1 year or something, and it passed, and the school committee said no. What do you think would happen?
I think that the first hurdle is, are you asking something of the legislative body that they can actually enact? You can't put on a town meeting warrant something that, you know, remove it from this situation, you know, should we stop sending foreign aid? You know, all in favor, sure, or opposed. But in that specific instance, you wouldn't have the authority to do that. I mean, the voters can't give you the authority to do that because it's something that you don't oversee. In this case, it's a little less clear to me, even, as you so aptly put, I'm not a lawyer. But the select board's jurisdiction ends somewhere out there, and the school committee's jurisdiction ends somewhere out there, and there's not an awful lot of overlap in that. Typically, you know, citizen activity, it's nice that people come and talk to you about electricity for the school, but they might as well be talking about electricity for the post office, because you don't oversee that. So if there's something the board wishes to do in order to, in essence, I scribbled a few words down, I think one of the words was mandate something, you need counsel to tell you whether or not you could you as a select board could enact that, where the jurisdiction ends and somebody else begins.
I would imagine if, instead of saying mandate, we said, if we had like a non-binding straw poll that said, you know, theoretically, that, you know, the residents of Lincolnville support renewable energy power in the school, and then, you know, explicitly say non-binding or something like that. Is that something that you think
Yeah, I mean, you can do, in essence, it's a survey of those that show up to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do something like that. But then the question is, what do you do with that? I mean, you can waive that at school committee members, and the school committee members can say, oh, thanks. Less people voted than elected me. It's a very tough situation and challenging, and jurisdiction a lot of times, and I've encouraged energy team members and others, to work through the educational process to find out what objections are to certain things, and to ask your elected officials to, do the right thing. Sometimes, I hate to say this out loud, but sometimes it takes people running for these jobs. There's reasons you all got on the Board of Selectmen. There's reasons other people get on the school committee or the, county commissioners or anything, and it's to advance a certain agenda. If you can't do it from the outside, sometimes you have to do it from the end.
Taking previous hurdles as an educational piece, as it relates to the town and the school and their relationship, there is a very fine line of which neither is likely to be able to have success stepping over the line, if that makes any sense. I think we, the town, would have better success if we all, meaning everybody involved, school, town, taxpayers, selectmen, worked on the same page for the common goal. I ask you, what was this document, this signature, this petition? How can that was circulated? How do I not know anything about that? And I'm not in the loop of everything.
It's because it was only for about 48 hours, because then
Okay. And
the
who
school
who suggested that you circulate this, or that someone circulate this?
a school committee member mentioned
Okay.
to two E-teams saying it might be helpful if the school committee received
Okay.
petitions.
Okay, so I will take that. The school committee is asking for what the will of the town is. Okay, so if there was an actual petition that had some significant amount of people who are actually passionate about this, which a lot of us are, that went to the school committee, that would probably, and I'm just saying this as my own personal opinion,
Yeah.
that would push for a meaningful conversation between the town or leaders of the town and the school, and we would make progress from that point. For lack of a better way to say it, trying to manipulate a organization to do something is not necessarily gonna make them feel all warm and fuzzy about it. Deeming it necessary or demanding or whatever on a town warrant, that would turn me around.
So I have two comments, if I could, please.
Yeah.
The first was, we just started that petition circulation, and there was only two of us. We were just getting going on February 1st and 2nd. So that's why you probably didn't hear about it. February 3rd was the school committee meeting, at which time the school committee made a motion and took a vote to send a letter to Revision Energy to say they weren't interested in the PPA. And the purpose of the petition was to request the school committee to request the select board to hold a town meeting about that PPA. So then it became a moot point.
Okay.
So that wasn't up to us
Yeah,
anymore.
I'm
So,
just-
it wasn't even our suggestion.
Yeah.
It was suggested to us, so we said, okay, we'll take this idea.
But it seems like
and
the school
try that.
committee is requesting that information, but you were like 3 or 4 days tops, maybe not even that, and it doesn't happen overnight, okay?
I know,
It
but
isn't
then
gonna
their
happen.
action stopped. It didn't make any sense.
Okay, I'm just
So
trying to
the other
get
thing
to.
is, we had gone to the school committee. They had suggested to the E-team that they would feel more comfortable if they knew what the will of the town was. So then we said, well, what's the next step? And we told you this at that update in December. Would a special town meeting? Well, yeah. So then we came and said, would you be open to it? And you said yes, if they made a formal request and had a school representative come to your meeting. And so there was a draft motion prepared, and we had two people, one who was gonna make the motion and one who was gonna second the motion at the January meeting, so that's what we all expected. And then those two people were absent from the meeting, and then the chair said she didn't want it on her agenda anymore. So, we've tried to work that way, and I'm not speaking for the E-team now. I'm just trying to say, if the town residents and taxpayers are the legislative body of this town, is there a path forward for a qualified voter to come to the select board and make a request that you put an article on the June town warrant? This PPA was proposed in August. It is now February. The June meeting is not until, the town meeting is not until June. So that means 10 months have gone by, and this is a very modest step towards some renewable energy at our school. So there's urgency around this, and there's frustration and disappointment in the community that the community hasn't had a voice. If there was some sort of article at the June town meeting, I mean, if we are the legislative body passing the laws and approving the spending of monies, at what point can we be the motivators to have action move forward? And I don't think there is an answer tonight. My intent was to just relate to the board. In previous times when we've come, we've had advice from the board saying, if you have people show up at these meetings, that's going to send a message. So 30 people came one night and 50 people came 6 days later. That's a good turnout in a town, saying that there's a lot of momentum and interest here. And we all have to do our part. I don't want to take any more of your time. I think I've communicated what I've wanted to. David, do you have any other ideas about a qualified voter coming before the board to request that they put an article on the June warrant? There is that third option, which is if that's declined by the board, then a citizen can get a petition with the minimum number of registered voters to get it on, and then the board, I think within 60 days, needs to have a special town meeting. Am I saying that correctly?
Not completely, but close. I mean, a citizen petition is always available to the citizens.
Yes.
Should they not get the desired response from their elected officials. The challenge once again is who has jurisdiction over the question and what's being asked. So if a citizen came into the Board of Selectmen with a petition for a legally sufficient question and the appropriate number of signatures or more, the Board of Selectmen would do their duty to put that forward to the voters. I'm sure of it. I've worked for a lot of boards of selectmen in 20-something years, and they always have.
Okay.
The question again, though, the keys are who you're asking to do what, and do they have the authority to do that?
So the legislative body who has the authority to approve the spending of monies doesn't have a role in this?
They do.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get a path for.
But the direction for the people that are expending the money on behalf of the citizens is not the Board of Selectmen.
No, but they're the ones that have to put an article on the warrant.
Correct. And if they
Okay,
had
I
an
think
appropriate article, they would put it on the warrant.
So, I have lots of other synonyms besides mandate. We could substitute, but I
Yeah.
think I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Item number 8 on the agenda, request of the Lincolnville Historical Society and Lincolnville Improvement Association regarding the LIA building. Diana Bryan, President, Lincolnville Historical Society.
So I guess tonight what I'm asking the board is that you table any action going forward for a year, till the next town meeting. I don't know what your plans were. I missed the last meeting. I was out of town. The Historical Society has, we need time to figure out what we're gonna do. And I get the sense that you're not all in support of fixing the building, particularly for the cost the estimate that we got. If we had another year between the LIA and the LHS, we'd like to look at the recommendations that were made for fixing the building and see what it is we really do need to do, and maybe what doesn't have to be done. That's a huge list of replacing all the windows, all the siding. There's quite a long list of things that probably don't really need to be done to make the building safe. And I do understand the issue of supporting the second floor, and certainly we need a new roof, some foundation work. But the entire project as it was presented just seems like it might be more than we need. From the Historical Society's standpoint, we hold the town's historical archive up there. We have hundreds of family photo albums, genealogies, documents, letters, diaries, to say nothing of just the stuff that people have given us. And we have no place else to go. And it's a little scary to us to think that possibly the building will be, I don't know what you do, decommissioned, take it down, sell it, and there we are. And in fact, that archive, if the Historical Society can't take care of it, reverts to the town. And so then, I don't know what happens. That's going to have to be up to the town. So anyway, if we have another year to look at the estimate, look at the work that needs to be done. There's certain things that don't have to happen. We don't have to have heat on the second floor, which means whatever kind of a furnace that it needs wouldn't need to cover the second floor. We don't need to have the windows changed. I'm wondering if there isn't a way to support that second floor with some kind of an external arrangement where you had some posts on the outside of the building that were on some kind of a footing rather than a full foundation, which is what I think the estimate called for. We, the two organizations, are willing to try to get some estimates this year for costs. What would it cost to put a new roof on? What would it cost, and who could come up with some other way of supporting that second floor, and would it make it more cost efficient? And that's work that we're willing to take on this year so that we could come back next year at this time, budget time, and talk about what we found. I think that it's taking the long view of our town and what's important here. I mean, I certainly think the historical buildings are important. I think that you take those things down and you lose something, and you have to ask, was it really worth doing that? Was that what we wanted to do? And I think that our historical record is definitely worth saving. I think it's behooves all of us to protect it. So that's what I've got to say.
Is there anybody else from the audience that might have something to add to that? Bob?
Well, Plas Whitney Road, president of the LIA. It's not easy being caught between a rock and a hard place, is it? What Diane is saying in effect is if we had more time, we would have other consultants or contractors look at the building and look at what has to be done to make the building livable, which could be, instead of $700,000, it could be $400,000. But keep in mind that no matter what happens, we have to come to the town for the money. The LIA cannot raise the money, neither can the Historical Society. In the last decade or so, the LIA, certainly its biggest function is scholarships for Lincolnville kids. And in no way are we going to fall back from our mission. And if we can't do that, and we have to sink it into the building as we've done for years and years and years, then we're not meeting our goal. The LIA has contributed and does contribute a lot to the town, a lot. And my heart tells me I like to go one way, and my business sense tells me I should go another way. So, and Josh was right. Every time you spend something on one thing, you don't have it to spend on another. However, that goes for everything, anything you spend money on. I haven't met with my board of directors personally yet, but I have spoken to them, and we have some split feelings also on the situation. If you were not inclined to do it, Diane requests, just do nothing for another year and let us see how far we can bring the cost down to make the building habitable for the next 50 or 60 years, which could be 300,000 or not 700,000, but we still have to come to the town for the money. But if you're not prone to do that, then I would ask if you put a warrant, an article on a warrant, that you do it two parts. One, does the town wish to spend a sum of money to rehab the building? That's only part one, because if the town says no, then what? You're right back where you started. So I would think part two, instead of drawing this out forever, part two would be, would the town be willing to sell that piece of property if they voted no? They don't want to rehab it. A two-part article to put this thing to bed once and for all. I would encourage you to think of Diane's request. It's not going to hurt anybody. Certainly the building is usable for the next year for all of us to meet. And I know that the architects and the engineers recommend that not more than 2 or 3 people use the second floor at a time, where the Historical Society is, but I also know we have 20 people when we go around looking at it up on the second floor. None of us have fallen through yet. So I do think it's structurally sound if we took another year to take a look at it and see if we could pare the cost down. But keep it in mind, as a board, when you make your decision, that we still have to come before the town for the money. It's not like, and I do appreciate the memo that I got from you folks, offering it as a gift. I could have been facetious and a little bit funny when I could have said, yes, the LIA would like you to gift it to us. That would be fine. And as long as you pay to transfer the deed to the LIA, for example. But after you transfer the deed to the LIA, the next day there's going to be a for sale sign there. So all it amounts to is we would accept your gift, we would sell the property for whatever we could get for it and put it in the bank. If that were going to be the case, the town should sell the property, put it in their bank, not having the LIA do it. But I would hope you would give Diane's request some consideration, and I know you're in a hot spot. When I say my heart, I think of all of the people that have worked to keep that building going for the last 90 years, and the monies that have been spent on it, and the rummage sales, and this and that, and everything else to raise money, and all those folks now are up in their 80s and 90s, you can't do this anymore. At one time, we would have done the labor. We just can't do that anymore. And we've all gotten a little more mature. We don't have quite the energy level that we once had. So that's what bothers me, is all of this last 90 years, all the heart that's gone into this building, all the hard work, all the sweat, and sometimes even tears gone into this building because we were not satisfied that we could do enough. But we always managed to do just enough. So that's where we are. But again, I would ask you, with all due respect, if you do put an article, if your decision is to put an article on the town warrant, to make it a two-part article. Don't leave everything hanging. And if you put an article in that says, do you want to spend X amount of dollars to rehab this building, and the town says no, we're right back where we started. Part two should be, do you give the selectmen permission to sell this building at auction, blah, blah, blah. So I don't want it to go on and on like some things. And I was on the school building committee when we built a new school, and I know what we had to go through a lot of times to get an answer. I hope we don't have to do that this way. We do have a problem with the Historical Society, where they're going to keep their archives and all of those things that are precious to this town, historical to this town. They've got to be kept in a warm, dry, safe place. Keep in mind that the LIA also is responsible for the Women's Club meeting places, etc. We're also responsible for the Christmas by the Sea party that goes on every year. We're responsible for a lot of things that we just don't all talk about all the time, but it's a big decision on your part. But whatever you do, I just hope you give us some thought and do it the right way.
And one more thing to say. If you should decide to leave it open for another year, we understand the need to have restrictions upstairs. We'd certainly post signs. We'd figure out an appropriate for visitors. That upstairs is never open when one of us from the Historical Society isn't up there. I mean, we don't just open the doors and let people just tromp through. We're there, and it's open 3 afternoons a week during the summer. So we certainly can monitor the number of people that come in and keep it, whatever you decide is a safe number. I think Bob made a good point that there were at least 20 of us tromping around up there the other day, and nobody seemed too worried about it. I didn't notice anybody nervously waiting for it to collapse. So I think that, and I'm not trying to make light of it because I know it's inadequately supported, but we would be responsible for that. And I think I guess basically we're looking for you to table it for another year. That's my request.
Is there anybody else?
Pat Shannon, Rocky Point Road in Lincolnville. I volunteer at the Historical Society. I'm archiving family records, and we're all about time at the Historical Society, and we're just asking for time for a year to let this be, for us to be responsible tenants of the building, to learn as much as we can about the possible future of the Historical Society and the LIA and of those possessions that we're responsible for. So just time. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Rosie?
Rosie Gary, I just wanted to say that I also don't really see the urgency and the harm in going with Diane's request. I think another year with stipulations and using the historical police, we should be able to maintain that and keep that to that point if we had another year. It's going to make, as you said, and I don't want to repeat, but it is going to make a real hardship. And I know you guys are aware of that, and I appreciate all you can do. But again, I just echo that same thing. Another year. Thanks.
Thank you, Rose.
Greta Galician, I would just like to also support Diane's suggestion to table it for another year. I think people in Lincolnville are really reasonable, and I think we can keep it open with conditions. And I think if Diane puts out a call for some extra people to come and do whatever volunteering needs to be done to monitor that those conditions being set for safety are complied with, I think she would have a good response. And then this is just supposed to bring a little levity to the meeting. If we had solar at the school, we would be saving.
No, that's gone. Okay, we've gone through that. Thank you.
I was just going to talk
Thank you.
about the money we were going to save.
Is there any questions from the board? Any comments?
I have one. David, in your guesstimation opinion, can we legally do that? Wait a year? We've started the ball rolling. It's on its way down the hill. We've started something into motion as far as looking at it, and we've been told that the restrictions it has and what it does. Can we legally say, okay, we're going to do something about it, but we need a year to regroup and replay and redo anything? Does that open us up to any liabilities that we haven't brought out in front of us yet? I know I'm throwing a good one at you.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, what is the risk? I guess
Life's full of liabilities,
Mhm.
and you're not going to make the decisions anyways. You can make the decision to kick the can 6 months, a year, whatever, down the road. Ultimately, whatever decision gets made will be made by the legislative body, because they're the ones that are going to decide to tax themselves to fix it, or task you with disposing of it by some means they want you to, or some other method. If you choose to table it, we'd want to make sure that we crossed our T's and dotted our I's and knew what we were getting into. That's true with any decision we make or you make, in terms of what exposure that presents to the town. To what it does to the town, I'm concerned with. To what it does to the individual, I'm more concerned with. Potentially, I mean, we have, I'm paraphrasing, but a building that we're aware of is structurally deficient. And heaven forbid something happen in the year we wait. If we wait a week, we've waited 2 months now since we've had the report. Nothing's happened in the first 100 years. What's going to happen in 101? I don't know. But we'd want to make sure, regardless of what decision you folks make and ultimately put forward, if anything, to the town meeting, we want to know as many of the implications behind that as possible. If you want to explore waiting a period of time beyond June to present something, we could get better information than I can do off the cuff right now, for sure. You know, that we had some short-term measures outlined for us that we have already implemented some of them, and we had some long-term solutions to the problem. None of the problems are going to be self-healing. All will require effort and expense on somebody's behalf.
What do you got?
I'm intrigued by this idea about waiting a year. I don't have a lot of experience with old buildings, and certainly no one can tell the future. So if this building would fall over, it has stood up for 100 years, so that's a good track record. But on the other hand, we have this report in hand with experts saying it's structurally deficient, and you know, that's a risk that, of course, that's, I don't know, that really makes me nervous. Before we did anything, I would certainly, before we put to the voters the option of disposing of the property, I would want us to have some plan on what to do with the historical materials as a town, because that is precious to all of us, and we want to make sure that's protected. But you know, right now, I can't see myself supporting putting a question to the voters asking for $750,000. So that to me is just kind of a non-starter. But waiting a year, I think we should. I mean, why not explore that at least for the next 2 weeks, and then when we have a full board, talk about that more fully.
Okay. That was my feeling exactly. One of the things that concerns me is we've got the report, which you all have read, which does indicate some pretty serious structural deficiencies. We have the people that we love in that building that have gathered the precious information for our town, which is going to be there for as long as we can, or going to be around as long as we can preserve it. I don't want to get a phone call that something's happened down there. So I'm willing to push this off to our next meeting to get some input from our other two board members, because they've been directly involved with a lot of this. I don't have anything else to say about that, other than I'm not willing to spend taxpayer money on having another analysis done on it. Mm-hmm. I feel the people that did it were very reputable and they're local. And
We're not suggesting that. We've got the report. We believe the report.
Yeah.
That's not what believe me, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we would be willing then to go out and find contractors, get prices on elements of it.
But in order to do that, Diane, you've got to occupy the building. Okay, so we need to come up with something that's going to be safe.
Okay, no.
Okay, if you remain there, okay, and right now, I don't feel good about having someone's future in my hands because of that report. So I want to push this to our next meeting so that we can have some input from our other two board members, so that we can make a decision as to discuss their request, the LIA and the Historical Society's group request, and then move forward from there. Maybe you want to attend that meeting too. I don't know.
You bet. You know, there's a plan B for us. I mean, we have to look at a plan B, because honestly, when you talk about keeping that stuff safe, do you know how much there is?
And we talked about that at the last meeting too.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And also, you can put it in storage units and then no one can ever see it again.
But see, there's a
So,
lot,
well-
and it's upstairs in
Well,
a
no, no,
place
no.
that's not safe.
Kern, let me finish. A plan B. A plan B would be a new building. And that's something the Historical Society would not object to. If you find that building unsavable, or however we want to put it, build us a new building.
Well, I
And,
think
and
all of us.
that's not a.
All of us have our own personal opinion about that building. And many of us have memories, but ultimately it will be the town that decides.
I
Not
understand
us.
that, but I'm just saying there is an option for us, and the only option we can see, if not that building that we're in, we really need a building to house this stuff, and towns do that kind of thing. Historical societies, you do own the archive. You may not know it, but you really do. All of us own it, the town owns it. And we maintain it, and we've maintained it in a town-owned building all these years, but now if that building goes away, it may need, but I don't think that's a bad option necessarily. I mean, it might be one that people could get around, I don't know. But
Okay.
that's it.
So, David, can we move this to our next meeting? We'll table this
Sure.
for right now, table it until our next meeting so that we can have our other two board members here.
Check.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank
all
you.
of your words. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Selectmen updates. Josh, what do you got?
Very exciting. We're going to have our first broadband committee meeting on Thursday at 6:30? 7 o'clock at the Lincolnville Town Office. So if you're interested in seeing what the committee has to say, then please attend. And if not, it'll be live streamed.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it?
Yep.
David?
I don't have anything to report at this time. I will have.
Yep.
A bunch of things are going on, but they're in flux right now, so I will have a report on that.
I have no updates as of yet for Midco Solid Waste. I have a Midco Solid Waste strategic and capital planning meeting tomorrow night. It's a rescheduled meeting from last week because of the storm. I also have a governance committee meeting for Midco Solid Waste, which is an hour and a half on Wednesday before the Midco Solid Waste Board of Directors meeting. So I will have updates at our next meeting, but as of right now, I got nothing for you. Okay?
I'm in the same boat.
All right. Next item on the agenda, public input, draft for the municipal budget fiscal year 2021. Everybody bring their budget paperwork. And who in the audience would like to provide input?
Who's remaining?
Where'd everybody go?
Seeing no one rushing to the podium. David, where do we go from here?
On to agenda item number 11.
Okay, we'll do that. Seeing no public input as of yet on our fiscal year 21 municipal budget, we'll move along to agenda item number 11. Board deliberations draft fiscal year 21 municipal budget.
So, within your packet, during our budget presentations, the board and budget committee had requested some information that we were unable to answer necessarily clearly and succinctly at those meetings. So you have a number of items within the packet that expands upon what was in the budget, and I didn't know if you had any questions on that stuff that didn't make any sense because it was kind of, to a certain extent, random. But I could try to explain it if there's more necessary.
So-
on those items.
So what you're saying is our budget, as of now, the budget that will be, or that we're working on, is potentially 580,000 lower than,
Then the
is that what you're saying?
Yes, then the property tax levy limit.
Yep. Okay.
Yes. Somebody had asked that question about, because I'd made the statement in the opening remarks that the budget was beneath the LD1 limit, and somebody asked how much. I didn't know off the cuff, but there you go. We're well beneath it. So when we
Okay.
get to that article at town meeting, we'll most likely seek to indefinitely postpone again. Look at my own notes.
Was, now, on the next one, David,
Yeah,
what is the status of the copier lease and what do we pay per copy?
yep.
Well, obviously, you've answered that question, but is that something that we ever bid out, or do we?
Yeah, when we get, well, I'll back up. The last time we leased a copier, which was 4.5 years ago, we got proposals from various copier lease people and picked the one we thought was in the best interest of the town. Signed a lease and away we went. They came, took the old machine out, put in a new one. Life was good. That will be up again later this year, or our lease expires later this year. And we would look to the purchasing policy that you approved 6 months ago, whenever it was, and see what it says about copiers or about a purchase or a lease such as this, and do it, follow it. But we'd certainly look to do it as efficiently and effectively, both cost-wise and others, for the town.
Anybody else got any questions?
No.
So, the next, can we provide, can we be provided with a breakdown of truck maintenance for the fire department?
Yep.
I looked that over quickly, that looks like it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, there's been fluctuations up and down and
Well,
over the years. I question whether or not we have a large enough request within the budget for the coming year, based on the past 2.5 years worth of history.
well, do you have a number that would be comfortable to change that to?
I don't.
Okay,
I would probably say at this point, now that we have a little more detailed breakdown, we ought to make sure that where the chief is coming from with his request.
okay. Are we scheduled to meet with him again, or no?
You could be.
I think we should.
We'll have to come to the next board deliberations on the budget.
Okay.
The concern being that the repairs on that truck are gonna be, a lot more than their
Yeah.
budget allows.
Well, I think we did have a conversation with Chief Fullington about the ongoing repairs to Truck 3 this year, and he believes that that's absorbable. I don't know if that's a word. Can be absorbed within the existing fire department budget, the current year that we're in.
Yeah.
My question is, looking back on the history and what is budgeted for requests for the coming year, just doesn't quite seem.
Okay.
We are gonna have one new truck and get rid of an old one, but the old truck that we're looking to ultimately replace, we're not doing much maintenance to anyways, because it doesn't roll.
But didn't he say, so for this budget period that we're working on right now, I wonder if he factored in they were gonna keep that truck?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, where they're looking to hang on to engine 2
Yeah,
for a period of time, looking to dispose of the access truck,
correct.
which isn't a big fire truck anyhow. But we've been spending minimal, shall I say, on engine 2. But even spending minimal on 4 trucks and having a new truck, we need to have a conversation with them about the dollars and cents, because
I agree.
it doesn't look like, I'm not real comfortable with that.
Let's have him come to our next budget deliberation.
Okay. I mean, we could take a stab at it, but it probably, he and AJ are probably
Do us a better.
the best helping us do that.
Heating fuel usage for the 2 fire departments.
Yeah, there's a breakdown in the back part. We've used, in fiscal year 19, which is the most recent year that's been completed, we used a little over 600 gallons at the beach station and almost 1,700 at the center station, oil. We're pretty much tracking the same thing for the current year.
Okay. Wow. What can we do to be better at that? Center station.
So I learned something interesting about our solar array. I learned that we are generating a lot more energy than we're actually using, and we have an excess. I don't know, is it 20% more than we actually use? And what I'm getting at is, that's my understanding. And what I'm getting at is, could we put heat pumps in either part of the town office that doesn't use heat pumps, or put them in the fire station and bring that down?
I don't think, there are certain times of the year where we generate more electricity than we use, certainly. But we bank that, and then during less production time, we draw from the bank. I did have a conversation with a couple of folks from the energy team about that very subject, and there was some conversation that they apparently had about utilizing that energy someplace else, like you said, heat pumps here, wherever else. And heat pumps a good idea. I don't know. I think we'd be best to, and my suggestion to them was, if they wanted the energy team involved in something municipally, is not to focus on one spot, but I was able to say, look, we've got 600 gallons a year we're using at the beach station, 1,600 at the center station. We ought to be looking at it holistically, so that if we're going to make a change somewhere, we get the best bang for the buck. Because the old part of this building, we heat with a relatively new propane boiler that was put in when they did this building, which hopefully was an efficient, good choice at the time. The addition part being with heat pumps primarily, although the propane backs up this part too. And where do we get the best usage for that excess we're generating? And it's not 20%.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm glad. Part of me wishes it was. Part of me is glad it's not.
Yeah.
But certainly, we ought to be looking to do our facilities all as efficiently as possible. And one of the other conversations about that was, at some point, the beach fire station, we're going to look to replace that. And as I said, in budget time, we're not taking that old furnace with us. Might serve us well to be used there. Might serve us well to do something at the fire station. Might be better off here. There's options. And I think the two energy team members I spoke to today, we're gonna take that back to the group, and then I wouldn't be surprised but to see that on a future selectmen's agenda.
This may come across as a dumb question, but the beach fire station, we have a truck there, right?
We do.
You do, okay. And I've never actually, I think I know which building it is, but I've never gone inside. So there's a truck in there. Which engine?
5.
Okay. And the point being that if we need to get to a fire that's closer to the beach, we already have a truck there. That's
Yep. Well, we have some firefighters that live relatively closer to the beach than they do the center. The other, as I understand it, is part of your insurance rates for your property is dictated by the distance to a fire station.
Oh, okay.
And they're also, way back in the day, I think there were, although they were related, there were almost 2 separate fire companies in Lincolnville
Okay.
Used better.
Back in the day.
back in the day.
Okay.
We're now one.
Let's see, the next one is provide the tennis court resurfacing proposals.
Yeah, you hopefully will recall that last year there was some discussion about what, if anything, could or should be done to the tennis court surfaces. We ultimately put some monies into not a true reserve account, but into an account plan for the for the resurfacing. The board asked that I talk to qualified people to find out pricing. I spoke with both Vermont Tennis and Maine Tennis. Maine Tennis said they would come when they were on their way to Owlsboro to look at the job, and never heard from them again. But you have the Vermont Tennis thing in there. We would look to quote that or bid that again when and if we had the money. We put $3,500 aside. The folks from Vermont Tennis said that they typically, like, if they had their druthers, they'd be looking to do a court resurfacing every 5 to 6 years. We've been one in a dozen now, although the court is in good shape, with the exception of the rust spots popping up through the paint. But we'd carried the whole, I think we put 11,500 in the capital improvement budget, figuring to partner with that 3,500 that we already had and resurface it.
Okay. So as of right now, did that, between those two, would that also cover striping it?
Yeah.
It would.
Well, striping the tennis lines back.
So I'm looking at this thing right here. So it's an extra, what, $300 for
The
pickleball
lines.
Yep.
So if you were looking to add, at one point they were looking at up to 4 courts, putting two striping, the striping for 2 courts per tennis court on there.
Yeah.
That would be an additional $1,200, getting the math right.
Okay. So as of right now, we've got enough money to resurface it and strike both courts.
No. Right now we have $3,500.
Well, what did you mean when you said about the capital?
In capital oh, you mean in the budget? In the budget right now, we have the amount that would be necessary to supplement what we have to resurface the tennis courts. if you chose to go with the lesser, the Vermont Tennis gave us, in essence, two proposals.
Yep.
One was to resurface it and paint it. And the other was to put down a rust inhibitor and then resurface and repaint it. You'll note that it's a rust inhibitor, it's not a rust blocker. There's no guarantees that it won't come up or wouldn't come up in a different place that it came up this, you know.
And how many years did it take for the rust that we're starting to see now come up? Quite a while.
A while.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm gonna say, if you didn't put the inhibitor down, you'd have enough money to resurface striped tennis and striped pickleball.
Yeah.
If you want to put the inhibitor down and you want pickleball, we better up that request by $1,200.
Have we got enough?
Or we set aside some more money for another year, and then
Yeah.
a year from now we have the same conversation.
What are the actual numbers of people doing this pickleball thing in the summer, you know, when the tennis courts are available? I guess what I'm getting at this is, do we need to do both courts?
I guess that'd be a question better, maybe aimed at the rec committee. Certainly Saturday mornings are when they have the outdoor community pickleball are very well attended. I mean, I haven't gone and played, but I've been by a number of times and seen plenty of people, and they've been taping the court, you know, putting down and actually the tape, I think they're able to put it down and it stays a while. Outside, when they were taping inside in the school, they had to take it up, put it down and take it up.
Yeah, okay.
Because of school activities and fear of what it might do to the floor.
Any more questions on that? Comments,
Did,
concerns?
when Stephanie was here on the rec commission, did they make a recommendation at one of their meetings as to how many pickleball courts they would? I think they were thinking 4.
They wanted to strike both.
Both
Yeah.
courts, yeah. I can check that with her.
Next. What does a typical trash receptacle cost?
Depends on what quality and what size and whatever you want, but I did get one from Kirby Built, who we bought some products from in the past for, the picture doesn't depict it very well, but it's a two bin unit that has I think the 33 gallon buckets that go inside. One for recyclable, well, it can be one for waste and one for whatever you want. They can change the names or the labels on them. But I didn't really know exactly what they were talking, but it sounded like they were looking at a 2-bin receptacle.
Seems kind of pricey. And
Well, you go buy yourself
they're
a
not,
quality thing that will last, you're gonna pay the piper, I think.
we've got, I don't know. How many were they looking to get of those?
Well,
3?
Three?
they certainly, we've kind of a little bit all over the place. Certainly looking to do something different at Breezemere Park, which right now just has one plastic barrel that gets picked up by our contractor that picks up trash, Wayne, or his crew. and then at least one for duck trap. But ultimately, there was also the conversation about having them be uniform, where we have at the beach, I think we have got 6.
Is it this type that we've got at the beach, Dave?
No, at the beach, just individual containers, container inside a container. There's no setup for recyclables, although I can tell you that.
Like they have at the ball field. They've got a container inside a container for garbage.
Yeah.
And recyclables, they have a garbage can with and the top has got a hole in it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
At the beach, I can tell you the returnables are recycled.
Yeah.
Out of the trash.
Yeah.
By our vendor,
Yeah.
by our contractor that picks that stuff up. But
I would like to see, geez, this is odd, I hate to cheap out here, but I think the bigger a container we have, the more people, whether they be using our facility or not, are gonna use it. Because, you know,
well, make no mistake about it. I mean, we get periodically episodes of household trash
Yeah,
in the
Trash can.
trash can at the beach.
yeah.
It just happens, you know. Or somebody's renting a overnight thing and they had lobsters and they go down and chuck the shells in them or whatever.
Yeah.
And you put a bigger can in, you get more stuff. You know, we used to have a dumpster at Breezemere Park, and that got abused, to say the least. I think people thought it was just a place, you know, to put the trash. And we went to the can, and you do have to monitor it. I mean, it's on a weekly pickup, but
I just think that's a lot of money for one dispenser. I mean,
No.
I know it's 2, it's a
well, it's still
garbage,
a lot of money.
but you still gotta come up with a container to go in it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
just
mean,
cover.
you put a garbage can inside it, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that can just be a,
Right,
It can be
homemade. Yeah.
anything.
something, yeah.
And I'm not saying you can't find less expensive ones. I'm sure I could Google it and find, you know, less expensive ones or talk to additional vendors. I just went and grabbed that because I knew where I could find it.
Okay.
And it puts us in the ballpark of what we're trying, or what it sounded like we were trying to accomplish. And I tell you, sometimes you buy cheap stuff, you get cheap stuff. And these things are in high traffic areas without a whole lot of oversight. And if you put something cheap there,
It's going to the store lot.
bad things do occasionally happen.
I think it's worth it. I think these are gonna last like 20, 30 years. Solid piece of recycled plastic.
And I would encourage us to explore, you know, other options and details, but when the cost came in and the cost for, I can't remember where it was, but I'll just say Breezemere was $1,500 and Duck Trap was $1,000, and somebody said, what does it cost? Is it $1,500 or is it $1,000?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you look and it's $1,300 and so,
Okay. All right. So we've got 2 areas that we're looking to, we wanna kinda replace it. What do we want to do? We want something at Breezemere, but are we looking to put new ones somewhere else?
I think Duck Trap was the other location. That has a barrel that's chained so it won't blow away or get tipped over. And that's heavier than the one down here. Breezemere is just a plastic
Yeah. Yeah.
thing right next to the porta potty.
Okay.
I was just going to see if I could, find what they
Do
wrote.
any of you have a sense of how much traffic Duck Trap gets?
How much traffic what gets?
Duck Trap gets. How,
Duck Trap is pretty busy. It's kind of like the quiet locals hangout versus going to the beach.
okay.
Judging by the trash pickup there, I mean, back when the town started to lease that or obtained a lease, we didn't the state wasn't providing any services down there. It was part of the Camden Hill State Park. And we used to have to call them periodically to come down and sweep, you know, do a walkthrough to pick up trash. And we took it over, and then we got that responsibility. And ultimately put a waste receptacle there, and we get it picked up periodically. Every now and again I get a call from a resident nearby that says, hey, it's full, and I call Wayne and they, yeah, we're picking up tomorrow, so it's good. But there's certainly, you know, it's certainly not Lincolnville Beach busy, but it's not sized like Lincolnville Beach either. But it's not uncommon to go down there and see 4, 5, 6 cars down there.
Okay.
People.
And I was surprised how many people show up there. And my history is 10, 12 years ago. I used to go striper fishing down there at night a lot. And I would go down it, depending on the tide, anywhere from midnight to 4 in the morning, and watch the sun come up and fish for 4 or 5 hours. And you'd be surprised the number of people show up there at that time time of night, because I'd be sitting there in a lawn chair asleep with a couple of fishing rods stuck there, waiting for the fish to bite. And people come over and talk to you. I got checked out by the Marine Patrol 2 or 3 times. Come down and asked me what I was doing. I told them, I was kind of sarcastic with them. But,
Yeah. Doesn't look like they had budgeted for a trash receptacle at Duck Trap. It was at the tennis courts, trash and redemption container, tennis courts, and trash receptacle at Breezemere.
See, I would really like to remain the same at the tennis courts as we are at the ball field. I just think it should be uniform there. Now, whether replace them all, or whose trash cans are at the ball fields? Are those
School. That's part of our agreement with them, is they provide the waste receptacle. We do the porta potties and
What about
whatever
the-
else, but they do the trash.
So is it?
I mean, they would pick it out of, if we got a container,
Yeah.
I'm sure they put the barrel inside the container.
Well, okay, so if they're getting well, that's good. They're getting the trash containers for the ball fields. Now, what about the tennis courts? Is that not their responsibility?
No,
Okay.
why?
because the tennis courts were built by
The town.
the town and the Recreation Commission, and our oversight policy that the board and the school committee agreed with has certain responsibilities, and they do what's listed on there, and the rest they don't.
Is there anything in the oversight policy about the tennis courts?
Yeah, is put up and take down the nets.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, I have to ask.
no, that's all right. No, I think that is it for the shared responsibilities for the tennis court.
So I would like to be similar. I just think it would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes us look like a
Yeah.
competent town.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I agree, but so that's just food for thought for conversation.
Well, if we want, we could ask the school to expand upon their responsibilities. Maybe we go buy the container and ask them to empty it.
Yeah.
I just
Can't
don't.
hurt to ask.
I just don't.
Let's
You know,
just-
we never. I don't. Well, I know we never had a tennis, and we never had a trash can there. I don't know if it was a problem, if it's
If we were to
a
get one of
a
these,
solution in search of a problem, or.
if we were to get one of these dual ones for the tennis court area, where would it go? I mean, where would we? Could put it inside.
I wouldn't
You
think
would
you'd
want
want to. I think you'd put it outside next to where you authorize the, storage unit for the pickleball. You know, there's a walkway there.
I guess I better stop by and see where I authorize that to go.
Hmm.
Okay.
And, you know, we'd wanna, if we're going to put a trash receptacle there, we're gonna wanna make sure that we have somebody that is gonna empty it.
Yep.
And, you know, it's, it's almost one of those things, if you put it there, it'll get used. If you don't put it there, people take, are they carry in, carry out? I don't know,
Yeah, okay,
but
that's a good point.
But as of right now, there is no trash
to
can
the
there?
best of my knowledge is no trash receptacle at the tennis courts.
Okay.
Nor has there been, I don't believe.
Okay, what does a dog waste station cost to purchase?
About $100, plus putting in the post, if you get one similar to what we have.
And so this was brought up by the rec commission. How many were they looking for?
I'm trying to see if I can find that.
No, they were looking for one down at Bridgman Park.
We have one there.
We already have one there.
Yeah. I think it was to go down to the beach
Oh.
and.
Oh, that's right, we talked about no walking dogs on the beach, but we need a dog bag receptacle down there.
Right, do we encourage it, or is
Yeah.
it happens anyways, so.
Maybe it's gonna happen anyway, so maybe it's gonna help us keep our beaches a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, I think we should have one down there.
But if we're saying no dogs on the beach and then we put that up,
Is that a municipal rule?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that predates me, but certainly we've had water quality issues at the beach, and I'm gonna venture a guess that diapers buried in the sand and dog, done on the beach contributes to
yeah.
poor water quality on occasion. I don't know, I'll be branded a dog hater, but I'm not. Just
Can a breakdown of the current athletic field budget be provided showing what's been spent, what is planned to be spent for the end of the fiscal year, along with the amounts and reasons for any carry forwards?
Yeah, so you have a little spreadsheet next to the last page on behind the tab that talks about the current year's budget, what's been spent to date. Still to spend is anticipated to be spent between when this was put together and the end of the fiscal year. And then a column that says leftover. And you talked about the carry forwards. Year ago we had a special town meeting because we weren't going to have enough money in the recreation budget to finish the year with contracted services. So we had $4,436, which the auditors carried forward. And then last year we didn't do the dugout staining and the green monster rehab, which was a capital project, so we carried that $2,350 forward again. And appropriated $2,700 for green monster rehab. And $1,350 for dugout staining. Still haven't done it.
Okay.
And the 10,529 still to spend for contracted maintenance, is that, they're gonna get to that?
Yeah,
before-
that's the infield prep that they actually were gonna, some of it they were gonna do in the fall, but then the weather decided to be less than conducive.
Okay,
So, yes. The 10,529, somebody took the spreadsheet and said, this still remains, this still remains, this still remains,
Okay.
and added it up.
great.
Okay.
Okay,
Question, can we receive an itemization, principal and interest of the 2008 road bond?
So that's the last sheet in that has your debt service payment schedule. You'll note that it was revised in 2015. It's not really it's not like refinancing your home, but close enough. They reissued the bond debt, and we received $1,684.06 worth of credit of interest we don't have to pay between then and the end of the loan. But we went out and borrowed $850,000 in 2008, and we're closing in on getting that paid off 2023.
Perfect, great.
But you can see how I think somebody was trying to say, what does it cost to borrow money, big sum of money, over what period of time, and what you pay for interest. I mean, on that $850,000, when we're done, the town will have paid $272,611.38.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like,
I mean, we're looking
I'm
at this.
shocked at how much that is, actually.
We're looking at this only $100,000 less than what we're talking about for LIA,
Yeah.
in roughly the same time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in all likely, I mean, we paid this back, and this was over 15 years, and the interest rates aren't on that sheet, but the interest rates with bonds isn't a constant, well, it could be, isn't often a constant 4% or 3%, or some are it's whatever they can sell them for, 2.35%, 3.21%, so the payments aren't always equal, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
you did have, I don't know if you, not to backtrack to an earlier article, but there was an estimate in here for debt service for $725,000 for the LIA. And how much interest that, I'd put that in over 20 years. I mean, you probably could, if you wanted to, finance it over 25 or 30 years, but I hate to finance something that for longer than its life.
Yeah.
Yep.
It just doesn't sit well with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were asked to follow up, ensure that sports field proposal will not include the application of Millennium Broadleaf Control and, is that glyphosate?
That's good.
Yeah, Bob Dickerson from Sportsfield, giving that direction.
Yeah,
Keep in mind,
he had that direction before,
yeah,
and they didn't apply it. And I think what happened is when they went to give us the proposal for the coming year, is they went back to an old spreadsheet and pulled that forward, and then
yeah,
that's why you had June, and it was like,
yeah.
And one of the things that he did say, and I want to make sure is that it's in here, is either the organic product that can be applied. They haven't had as much success with that in terms of longevity, and they say you ought to consider, if your goal is to have an infield that doesn't have weeds growing up in the skin part, you better plan on more labor and maintenance to keep that down.
That means like more mowing or?
No, he's
Dragging.
talking about in the bases,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll need to be worked weekly.
Basically,
2-3 times a
somebody's
week.
going along with a
Yeah.
cultivator and dig out the weeds.
Yeah,
Okay.
usually, well, I know what we did down to Marge Jones was we used a tractor and a thing that turns the dirt up, and then you go behind that and a rake with a rake and rake it all in.
Okay.
It's labor intensive, but of course, if you don't want to use chemicals, which we want to do the right thing, it's going to be more labor intensive. So that's going to be on. The rec committee needs to know that, with their plan.
And
Yeah.
the other spot where this in the Wayback Machine, I don't know if not that many years ago, was applied was down down the fence lines.
Yeah.
And really the only good alternative to that is weed whacking,
Yeah.
which is another labor intensive, but it's certainly doable. It's just doing it.
Well, we need to, that's gonna have to be a recommendation, because in order to maintain the fields as presentable, you know, that's, it's just gonna, it just doesn't work as great, that's all. And I get it. Okay. So did we or someone receive a different quote without that stuff?
I have not yet received the revised quote, although I did speak with Bob and he promised me he would send one, but I don't have it. Pretty much, their recommendation is just gonna be pull those lines out and that'll give you a different dollar amount.
Yeah.
And then, they're more than willing to apply the, organic option, but he says you probably are, their experience is you won't necessarily be pleased with it. And so we ought to consider bumping up labor.
Yeah, okay. Will Robert Libby be available to mow at Breezemere Park, and is the compensation offered at?
That was a nice conversation with
I
Mr.
bet it
Libby.
I bet it was.
He told me he planned to mow for the coming year, and I'll quote this, as long as I'm living in the coming year and able. And he wasn't asking for a raise, but he did say he wouldn't turn one down either. So take that for whatever you want to do with it.
So we'll need to have a conversation about, I feel, $600 is it's almost like a slap in the face, but.
He's gotta spend half that on gas.
Yeah, and he's using his own equipment, and
Let's definitely pay him more.
geez, I feel if we can't give him $750, I'd love to give him $800, but I know that's a $200 jump and everything, but I just would like to put that in everybody's mind so that when we have that conversation again, I really think, you know, he's using his own equipment, his own gas, you know, everything.
And he's mowing it like what,
and
once a
his
week
time.
or?
Yeah, once a week. Yeah, sometimes he's maybe a week and a half or whatever. He doesn't trim, he doesn't do any trimming, we have to pay somebody to trim, but, you know, he's done it for years. So,
Yeah, it's been a long time since we went from 500 to 600. I can't even remember. I remember when it was done, but
yeah, it was a while ago.
yeah, it was 10 years probably.
Okay, obviously, everybody's gotten the, you know, this, it's got some of Chair Dunn's recommendations for budget reductions, and I don't see any reason to go through that right now. Probably when we're all together, but things to think about.
Yeah.
Definitely, there's a reason for a couple of them there. So we'll discuss those when we're all together.
She lately did ask for a copy of what she said profit and loss for the library. I don't know if it'd be profit and loss, but I have not requested that. I certainly can do that in the library.
Okay.
If that's of interest to anybody else.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What else are we got here? Is that it?
Yeah, really, if there's anything that, you know, as you fight insomnia and you're reading this, or you think you want more information, you know, we're rapidly approaching when this will have to go on to the budget committee with your recommendations. And if there's something else that we can get for you that makes it easier to make those recommendations, you know, the sooner you let us know, the better numbers we can get. Some of this stuff some of it's easy to grab and some of it's a little more time consuming.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That you may or may not know the answer to. So we pay firefighters $12 per call, or that's the idea for next fiscal year.
We pay firefighters 1 hour for a call at minimum wage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know what other volunteer fire departments do around the state? If that's sort of standard?
No, we're not standard.
Okay.
I don't, I probably could find out.
That's a good question. Where do we fit into this?
Because I have no
What,
idea.
my understanding is initially and this predates me, initially that was adopted in Lincolnville so that they would receive some pay, so that if something happened to one of them, they would qualify for workers' compensation. Because if you were at one point, if you were a volunteer, you were a volunteer. My understanding now is that either the law got changed or the interpretation of the law got changed so that if you were a volunteer doing volunteer firefighting and something happens to you, you're covered. But once you pay somebody $12 an hour, you know, nobody's getting rich doing it. You're not going to necessarily roll that back. So,
I wonder if the chief would know where we fit in.
well, I've got somebody in the office I can give that assignment to.
Great.
And she'll be all over that. Whether she wants to or not. And I'm not gonna look at Melissa. She's got other things she's gotta do.
Well, I think unless there's more questions.
I want to see really quickly.
And certainly, if you've got things that pop up tomorrow or Friday,
Yeah.
whenever, we'll do our best, but the hope, dream, or aspiration is that when there's, at the next meeting, we can start to fill in, if not complete, the selectmen's recommendation column, because we gotta move this on.
Yeah, we do.
Is March 9th our
We actually have, the schedule has this going to the budget committee on the Tuesday after your second meeting in March. So the 9th, the 20, what was that, Nate?
23rd.
23rd? Thank you. So we're going to the budget committee on the 24th.
Okay.
However, you know, we do have some work we've got to do behind the scenes to compile that and move it on. But if you do it on the 23rd, we'll have it done on the 24th. But hopefully you have it done the 9th, so we can have it done the 24th,
Okay.
if possible.
Let's shoot for that.
Is that it for our deliberations for this date on the municipal budget?
Can be.
I think so.
All set? Okay. Hey, this is great. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Treasurers and payroll warrants. Approve and sign. Do I
I move-
have a motion?
I move that the board approve the treasurers and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? That passed. Is there anything else that may not have been on the agenda? David, you all set over there?
I'm done.
Melissa, what do you got? You want? I wanna get out of here, huh? Okay, could I get a final motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? This meeting has ended.